with Mr. Ganesh and Soenil. Now we have a collaborative presentation by two speakers, Mr. Ganesh Kannan from Singapore and Soenil Soebedar from Netherlands. Mr. Ganesh is an enthusiastic and passionate IT leader with over 2 decades of rich industry experience as a senior consultant, trainer, and entrepreneur. He has worked and consulted large enterprises and financial institutions like Barclays Capital, Credit Suisse, J&J, JPM, and NatWest. He is well experienced in agile projects management and coaching, DevOps, quality assurance, and robotic process automation. He enjoys monitoring aspiring and experienced IT professional and teams for diverse background. Mr. Soebedar is a founder of Soebit and he will introduce himself before his presentation. So I'll hand over the stage to Mr. Ganesh now.
All right. Thank you, Sumi.
Thank you.
A warm welcome to everyone. The session, I think it was a very good introduction from Sumi, so I don't want to add more onto that, who I am. The session what we have now is basically more focused on DevSecOps, because this is a cybersecurity conference. So, but to just arrive there, I just want to share my knowledge and experience on DevOps in general, so that I can set the platform on which Soenil can build his ideas and thoughts. So let me start sharing my screen first, and then talk a little bit about DevOps. Right. So hope you are all able to view my screen. If this is not it?
Not it.
Okay. Just sharing. I don't see a sharing option, Sumi. Is it like...
Just next to the mute button, there is a screen share option.
Leave button?
Mute button.
Mute button. Nope, I don't see here. Just give me a minute.
Sure.
Okay, I got it. Sorry for the delay.
Okay.
So is it visible now, Sumi?
Yes.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have very few slides, but more than walking through the slides. So we just covered that part. It's co-presented by me and Soenil. And this is the topic that we are going to talk about. First, my introduction about Agile, what is continuous integration and DevOps, then followed by Soenil's about DevSecOps. Any takeaways and questions? This is again which is explained by Sumi about my profile. So please reach out to me if you would like to know more about Agile, DevOps, and those are the areas I specialize in. So the first slide is generally to talk about Agile software development. Most of you would have, you're probably aware of it now, that the whole manifesto is basically goes around 4 areas, right, where we focus on individuals and interactions over process and tools. What it effectively means that the teams have to collaborate and self-organize on daily basis than really the tools and processes that we use inside the team. So basically it talks about how the teams can work together and team dynamics. We also found out when they wrote the Agile Manifesto, one of the major things that happened in a traditional way of working is too much of documentation, right? Teams spend a lot of time on documentation. So Agile says working software is the only measure of progress, right, over comprehensive documentation. The third one is collaborate with your customers than really contract-based. Generally, when you work with organizations, right, that is another blocker. You keep on challenging contracts, right? You say which is out of scope, which is in scope. If I need to do this, then I need to charge you more money, right? That kind of wastes a lot of team's effort and the client's effort, right? So collaborate with them rather than talking too much about contracts. Contracts can be there. I'm not saying no contracts, but more important is collaboration. That is why you say what is on the left side is more important than the right side. It doesn't mean that the right side should not be there at all, right? The left side is more important. Responding to change over following a plan. Whenever there is a change from the customer or from the markets, about your application, instead of saying no to them, you just think about how you can handle that change and introduce that change into the software applications, right? So these are the higher level introductions about agile. So I thought I'll start with this and maybe move over to DevOps. So what is DevOps then? So agile is a broader umbrella term, right? You have a lot of practices under agile. One is that you use models like Scrum, Kanban, which is about team collaboration. How do we develop software? It's more on the process side, right? DevOps is more on the practices side, right? More on the technical side of things. How you can ensure that your software engineering and infrastructure and the other teams can work together right from your requirement stage, that is from the time the customer states his need to the production. The most importantly, so is it something that we have not been doing before? It is not like that. The word itself is coined around 2008. You just need to picture very large organizations, usually, where your IT team is like 1,000 plus, 5,000 plus. Some of the companies where I worked, we had IT team of around 6,000 software engineers, right? IT engineers. In that, the dev team, the development team, or the project team is very, very isolated from the infrastructure team, right? And then that is kind of causing confusion. So the emphasis of DevOps is basically you start working together as a team from the beginning. Now, when you start doing that, what really happens is that you are able to deliver your application and value to the customer much, much faster. It is one of the fundamental principles of Agile itself. You improve your code quality. That is what I mean by better development, better providing insights onto the. Now, when you start providing incremental value to the business, obviously the whole business works. Right? So DevOps is a practice, basically. Again, it has got a lot of substance, which we'll just see in the subsequent slides. So as I explained in the previous slide, so you see the technology ops team, operations team, which manages the infrastructure, provides support to the applications. They were in a large organization, detached, and they were working as a separate team. Development team was working as a separate team. And many organizations, they had their own software testing or quality assurance center of excellence. And this was the case by and large. I was part of a very large bank till 2011. And what happened eventually was that the center of excellence was collapsed when they really, transformed into an agile model, right? Basically, everybody should work together, align towards a center goal. So it is actually a culture of trust between all the actors who are involved in the software development life cycle. Mostly one of the key aspects of agile. So what usually happens is a very normal DevOps life cycle, right? You have your build, then you basically plan, you build, you code, you test. You can even add scan to it. You monitor your application, right? So all these things goes on an incremental way. That is, I am able to do it every day. Am I able to incrementally provide value to the environment on daily basis? Or I'm able to, when I say providing value, it is moving your application to production, right? And deploying to your application, right? So when you start doing all these things in a much faster way, now, of course, with the support of all the tools, we'll see some of the tools. My intention is not to get into all the tools, but just give an overview of what is DevOps, right? Idea is how many deployments I can make in a day, how many deployments I can make in a week, right? Based on that, your maturity is assessed, organization maturity or team maturity. So the typical life cycle is code, build, test, scan. You can add scan. That is where the whole, DevSecOps comes into picture also, right? Now, what is the challenge which we saw already? There is a wall of confusion between development. Development team says, I want a change. I want to send. Operation team says that I want stability. I want the application to be available. I want the infrastructure to be available 24/7. So you don't send me a change. My infra is not ready. So you have different goals and different alignment. And there is a lot of confusion around it. So just to break down that silo, DevOps came into picture, right? So there is one project, two groups with two goals and visions, which should not be the case. If you really want to move faster, right, you need to avoid confusion between the teams. We should all align to a single goal, right? So this was one of the challenges that was there in the industry. Now, I think many organizations, and I've been consulting some UK banks also quite recently, they're all onto this journey, of DevOps transformation or agile transformation. And one of the key things that we look for is that how we can ensure the software engineering team and the operations team to work as closely as possible, right? Multiple ways to do it. For example, we make the operations team. Something could be as simple as making the operations team member to come and attend the engineering team stand-up meeting daily, right? It could be something as simple as that, right? I mean, apart from the technical aspects, right? So again, breaking those silos. So BA, coder, tester are all working on silos. Tester says that my intention is only to find bugs. I don't care what you develop. Developer says that I will just develop something, but it is up to the tester to test and raise bugs. BA says, nope, I'm just going to give the requirement specification to you. And Ops says, I'm only interested in the infrastructure and availability of the application. Now, this mindset, that is why we say one of the first things in the DevOps is two mindsets. One is how you can work as a team. Second one is how we can provide value in smaller chunks. That is, provide value to customers in very short period of time, right? Some big organizations I know, and something which I've read, like for example, you can take Google, Amazon, they do multiple deployments in a day, right? If you take Amazon website, for example, which consists of around 200, 300 microservices, where microservices can be deployed very independently, right? They make multiple deployments in a day, right? So that is the ideal goal. But to reach that level of maturity, it takes a typical enterprise a lot of time, right? So I'll not get too much into that, which we discussed already, very similar to the previous slide. So this is a typical, how do we achieve this, right? How do we achieve this? Then we use state-of-art tools. We do a lot of test automation. Test automation is introduced into your continuous delivery pipelines. We use a tool called Jenkins, right? Jenkins is a CA server, which basically helps in building your application, running the test suites, scanning your application, stores the entire reports, right? Then if everything is good, your scanning results are good, the test cases, test automation is all good, then you can eventually make an automated deployment, and then you can use some monitoring tools. So if you see the whole cycle, right from the business to software development, to check in using a repository Git, and then using a continuous integration server like Jenkins, and then run your automated test scripts. Then you make a deployment using a tool like Puppet or Chef. There are many tools available on the market. I've just given you very straightforward and simple tools. I can further break it down and create a massive pipeline. One thing which you may want to remember is that this whole thing is not going to be one single pipeline. One will be a CI pipeline, which is continuous integration pipeline. One could be a continuous integration deployment till UAT. And the other pipeline could be a completely deployment to the prod itself. So don't think that as a single pipeline. So if you have used tools like Jenkins, you know that for a single project, you can have multiple pipelines configured. Again, this session is not about that, so I'll just move quickly to the next slide. Now, how do we embed security in this? Right, in this whole thing is what we are going. Whole development practices, DevOps practices. How do you think you can embed security? Is a topic for Soenil. Right, so this is the final thing. Better time to market, faster from business idea to production, because we have completely automated everything. Right. So when you have an idea now, as soon as I code, I hit the build. Right from my test, deployment, everything is automated. Right. Then which means that obviously it goes to the production much faster. And also I have a very high maturity of software engineering practices. For example, my developers write very good unit test codes, unit test automation. For example, if you have used Java, then you use a unit test framework like JUnit. Now all these things are practices also is very important. It is not about, for example, adoption of cloud, because cloud helps you to scale up and scale down very faster, deploy applications very faster, right? So all these things put together is, eventually, one of the, as I said, DevOps is a broader practice. You have a lot of things inside, so you need to adopt every piece of it. Do reach out to me if you want to know more. We can talk about it. I do provide a lot of training and consulting around that, right? And last but not the least, of course, I have moved everything to prod. Am I done? No. When my system fails over, everything should be good. My failover solution should work fine. My disaster recovery should work fine. I should make changes to the production in the shortest possible time by using things like blue-green deployment without impacting the users. So quality, stability, availability, and operability, everything is important, right? That is why we need to do DevOps, right? So this is a broader picture, right? I mean, most companies, as I told you, they deploy code up to 30 times more frequently than their competition. That is for enterprises that have really adopted DevOps practices, which includes development practices, infrastructure technology like cloud. It can be private cloud or public cloud, doesn't matter, right? And also a proper continuous integration and continuous deployment pipeline, right? So this technically means that you need to invest a lot in your upskilling your people, finding the right talent, getting the right tools, everything. So DevOps will not happen as is. I mean, it's like the same thing. You want to live in a great house, you need to spend money to build a great house, right? It doesn't come free. So for enterprises which are trying to go to DevOps, don't dream about it if you are not ready to invest time on that, time and money on that. That's pretty much my slide. I will now pass it on over to Soenil, who will talk about DevSecOps, and I will take on any questions towards the end. I'll be hanging around here. All right.
Okay.
Should I leave Sumi?
Yes, sir. You can be on backstage, but you can put off the speaker and the video, so you will get to listen to Soenil as well. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Soenil.
Yeah, just a minute.
Sure.
Think you are able to see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Ganesh. We will proceed with the security part. Briefly, who I am. Someone who missed some of the session for today. I'm Soenil Soebedar. Live in the Netherlands. 28 years in the IT field, more than 8 years into the cybersecurity field. Work for several countries in Europe, but also for Indian companies. 18 certifications, and have done more than 31 cybersecurity courses, trainings. Work for a lot of clients, international clients. Some of them are international clients. Currently, I'm working on an assignment by the ABN AMRO Bank as a senior security engineer. Some of the roles I have been done, and I'm still the owner and founder from Suisse cybersecurity company. some branches where I have been work, and brief about some training part. Also, I'm certified authorized training partner for Rocheston for the Netherlands and Europe since 2020. So that's a brief who I am. Let's proceed on the sec part on from the DevOps area. So the question raised mostly who's responsible then, and the number one in this list. DevOps is responsible, but the security team is accountable for what's going on. So it's and you will see in a lot of other steps there are some collaboration needed. So the dev team empowerment, so that we work together, already also mentioned by Vandra Varma's presentation, also how we need to work together. So to work together to build a stronger DevOps environment. The DevOps came mostly, and the concern was the quick testing what they want, and just as Mr. Ganesh mentioned, testing, and go further quickly to production. Those was mostly the reason why security was missed or bypassed. Some of the part what's important to be sure that everybody should be able to have the basic security education, knowing also developers know which kind of security issues can be raised, and there is a lot of training or basic trainings required to be sure that they are able to get it. Combination with security awareness. So if you are a developer on a Java application, the Java security and the vulnerabilities could be interested for you as a Java developer. But how to deal with an front end or a back end of a website makes sense to understand for all the developers, even you are not developing a website. So those basic security awareness is also important to get it. Security teams, we are seeing, or I'm seeing more moving into a kind of auditor role where they are checking, controlling the part what has been developed, and not more as a security person to say this not good, you need to change it, or this need to be done. Of course, that will also be based on the results. There is a part, but it's not that more in a controlling way. There are some DevSec frameworks also in progress or working. A lot of companies will work on it. I will show some of the samples on that. Be sure that you are able to use the security tools, and I will mention some of the security tools also during the presentation. And how and why we need to shift more left, near to the developers. It's not that we need to shift, but that it's near in combination with the developers. So on that part, will be also discussed. Has been also mentioned by earlier presentations from speakers about shifting security to left. So if we are seeing the DevOps, we already know. So the red part has been added. So from threat modeling, secure coding. For now, I will cover mostly the left side, what's near by the dev part. So we try to put the security near to the dev, and I will go one by one on the left side from the dev part during this presentation. So there are some threat modeling has also been mentioned yesterday in the webinar also, how and what are threat modeling, but there are some frameworks, methodologies, what they are using. So by checking on internet on those short descriptions, Stripe, Pasta, Fast Strike, and more, those kind of, you will get more information about the modeling, what they are using on threat modeling. For now, I will not go in depth on those topics, but just some keywords based on that. You should be able to find more information on those topics. So threat modeling is, of course, one of the part to be sure what are you able to find. So it's actually put a lens from a hacker point of or attacker point of view and see in the codes or applications what I'm able to get it. So that this in a short note how and what threat modeling should be. So for securing the code, you will see there are some keywords mentioned that are based on the OWASP checklist. So in depth, you can go in details on each topic, how you should be able to check it and do the test. A lot of developers are not aware about this framework, even not about the OWASP, but it has been very clear written how and step by step you can do those kind of tests. So this part should be or is nice to have to be added into the developers teams where they are able to check those kind of vulnerabilities. Of course, the OWASP is more for the web-based applications, but OWASP also for mobile devices and a lot of other specified environment where you should be able to get information. So some of them we can discuss a whole day about all the OWASP checklists in details, and so there are plenty and a lot of information available. And OWASP is also an open source where you should be able to collect the information. So there's a part about the secure coding. So security as code is more a mindset of how you should be able to implement the security practice into the DevOps model from IT point of view together with developers and the security. There are frameworks, as I mentioned, and to be sure that you are in control. Based on this, you should be able to try to use the security as a code model. I skipped some of them or move it now quickly to the pen test for the SAST, DUST, and the EIs, as I will come after this. The pen testing is still needed because even every actions has been taken, you want to be sure that from a pen test point of view, they have covered a lot of them. So pen testers are not only doing the code review maybe, but also checking the overall security picture, but it could be also a part of a physical security or a device security, what need to be tested. As a developer is maybe more interested in the software part and not in the hardware, how to connect or how to you are able to go further. So the pen test preparation of the steps are mostly, it's a high level, prepare what need to be pen tested, information gathering, what kind of information you are able to get, vulnerability management or scans, and scans will be on that topic. You are able to do some exploit and go further into that application, create reporting and discuss the reporting and evaluate it. So these are some of the steps on pen tests is what are still needed. So some of those techniques that you are able to use. So SAST is the one. So SAST is used to secure software reviewing the source code of the software to identify the source of the vulnerabilities. So you are doing that to the main goal is to analyze the source code. Supporting you will get on more languages, Java, .NET, you call it, but the disadvantage is a bit that you are mostly getting very high false positives on this method. Mostly this will happen also on kind of black boxing pen test where you are not able to get a lot of information. So here are some of the tools. On the left side, you will see some of the commercial tools, and on the right side, you will see some of the open source tools which you are able to use to do the testing. On the tools, we will not discuss, but there are some of the tools. Of course, there are on each item more tools available. There are some of them. So what's Dust? Dust is more the dynamic part where you should be able to do the communication with the web application and the front end part also, to also be able to get the vulnerabilities part. So you can mostly use if you are doing automatically runs on pen testing. So you don't want to do manual pen test as in the previous slide with those 6 steps. So for automating pen testing could be used. If you want to exploit into those websites, you can use it. But mostly those scan will take a long time to finalize it. But you can schedule mostly tools, you can schedule it. Here are some of the tools. Also from commercial point of view and the open source point of view. The most on the web part, Burp Suite is a very famous one, but there are also some vulnerability scanners applications where you should be able also to use as a dust tooling to work on that. So you have created get one of the compares. So the SAST vs the DEAS. So as I mentioned, the SAST is more into, and you will see more into the white boxing. Sorry, I make a mistake. I mentioned black box, but I mean white box. And Dust will you see more in the black box part. And some of the approach, by SAST you will do your test like a developer, and by Dust you will be more like an hacker from outside, or try to do as if you are a hacker. So here there are some of the similarity, what are the advantage and disadvantages on those two topics. Yes, you will see very less on this, but that is also moving more into the market. So actually in this part, you should be able to do the test during and running of the application on the fly kind of. So mostly functional tests can be done, but there are less false positives, and your test can be done on the fly. There are some risk, of course, in this situation involved, that if you are doing this on the fly and you are doing directly on the production environment, it could be impact the production environment. So by having a proper production environment, or your acceptance environment should be an exact copy of your production environment, you should be able to do it on your acceptance environment to be sure that you are able to do this part also. Some of the tools, there are commercial tools, some of them. I found very less open source tools, but I saw that Contrast is setting up a community where they are also from the commercial, but also from open source point of view, working on it. So these are some of the part about the EIS. So moving forward to digital signing. So now you have created, and you want to release it. So the developers have done all the hard work to create it. You have done your testing on the SAST, DAST, or the EAST methodology, and now you want to be sure that you are able to put your stamp that your company created or you have created. So by using digital signature, authorized software publishers, a part of code signing can be added. Digital certificate could be considered, and using some encryptions methodologies you should be able to apply. Code signing, we can discuss a brief about it. What's code signing? So the developer create the code. You add the hash function on that, then you will get a hash code. You will encrypt the hash code with a private key. So also in this presentation, we will not go in depth about the private, public, symmetric, asymmetric certificate, but you put a certificate key on that and private key on that. You put your signature on that, and based on that, you can attach your code on that, and you will get a signed code. So actually, that is the part you want to share or put it on your website or anywhere, so you are able to get your shared, your signed code. So let's bring almost. We have covered the left side. Of course, the right side, there are secure transfer. Be sure that you are able to know how to share your code. So could be platforms that you are using, internal, external, GitHub, or if you want to share it, you can use all those kind of options are available. The configurations file, the configuration files which you have configured, how to store it, how to deploy it, will be mentioned. In the security scans, you can do some of those vulnerability scans again. Patch management or security patching is also required, especially from operating point of view. Auditing, also a bit mentioned. Auditing part can also be done by auditors and will be done by security auditors, where they are able to advise you on that based on the whole process. Monitoring. Mostly you will see the monitoring from security operation centers. SOCs are able to check together with, in some situations, with the operating part. Security analysis, and we are back actually, and that's also a combination of that, to getting the feedback, how to create the follow-up on that, and how to create maybe use cases of PowerBook, how they are able to proceed. And based on that, we are back on the threat modeling part. So then I found that there are a lot of frameworks as some of the solutions. This is one of the solutions what Red Hat create. And you will see now some of the keywords what I already mentioned. The SAST in these pictures, on some fields you will see the DAST, the EIS, vulnerability management, hardening, encryption, all kind of stuff. You will see those back in these phases, what they are already using. Of course, this is based on Red Hat systems together with the deployment part. So this is just a sample. Microsoft create also a kind of DevSec kind of controls, they call it, with planning, development, how to commit it. And you will see also by commit example, the static application security, the SAST, and all those security acceptance pointing. You will see more into the testing part, and the pen test, the threat intels. So based on that, you will see that more companies, also international and large companies, are working also to be sure that the DevOps will be, or the DevSecOps will be also merged together. So that brings me almost to the end. Some geek takeaways together with Mr. Ganesh. We set it up, start from the beginning with the secure coding. That should be our advice. Use the secure coding best practice. As mentioned, evaluate and adapt the industry security scanning tools. Integrate the security scans into the CI/CD pipelines. Has a team working between the DevSec and Ops, and some basic security educations is nice to have, or at least it should be, or not nice to have, it should be in all those teams where they are able to work. So that brings my part to the end. So if there are any questions, Mr. Ganesh, and I'm able to answer your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Soenil, and thank you, Mr. Ganesh, for your lovely presentation. Yes, we do have a few questions. Are you ready for the questions?
Yes.
Yes. So the first question we have from the audience is, are third-party libraries or open source codes more vulnerable to threats?
All right, definitely they are more vulnerable to threats. There are OSS security scanning tools in the market. As the key takeaway which Soenil presented is that you need to integrate those scanning tools into your CI/CD pipeline, right? And then there are actually databases in US like NVD, National Vulnerability Databases.
Right.
All your scanning tools will go in there. It can give you the risk. There are also tools which are slightly based on artificial intelligence that it can fix also. So think more. Yes, it has to be. Yeah.
All right. The second question is, We cannot expect all developers to be security experts or implement application security, whether they be standards or policies. Is it necessary for developers to be more aware and trained in coding with minimal error?
Yes, as mentioned also in the takeaway, those basic security educations it's required, and based on that they should be. And indeed, not all. If you have a team of 50 or 60 developers, not all of the developers should be having those based on that specified application or web application the knowledge. Those
Right.
basics awareness should be for all, but all the developers, but only you can get some of the key persons from the team, Spock kind of persons, where you are able to work, as earlier mentioned, kind of cybersecurity champions, where you are able to deal with them. And based on that, they can spread the word into the dev team.
All right, all right. I think we have a similar question. How do you check DevOps policy for your software provider who is writing the code for you?
Well, that's a good question. So you have to dive a little deeper into their software engineering practices itself. So as I started, that is why we started. The very reason that we did jump onto security is that we wanted to give an introduction about DevOps first, right? So you need to go on, when you are engaging a vendor, you need to go and find out what kind of software engineering practices they are doing, right? Whether they what agile model they are following, what DevOps they are using, what tools they are using. That will give you a lot of insight about the security aspects also.
Right. So we'll move on to the next question. How different is the role of security professionals in DevSecOps model compared to traditional practices related to information and application security?
That's a good question. See, looking at this current topic, right, when you say DevSecOps, right, what are we actually saying here is that how we are going to make developers more responsible on the security space. Like that Sunil also mentioned. This never means that you don't need a security engineer in the team or you don't need a person who is doing that kind of work. But it's a shift in the mindset, right? So you have to make your developers uh, tackle most of the security aspects, and then your security aspects experts say they can basically stay as subject matter experts in the team and advise the developers on various security aspects. So DevSec is all about mindset change. That is why the topic itself is shift left with DevSecOps. The left means moving back to developers.
Right. And we have two more questions. I think three more questions. Will using too many tools for DevSecOps bring down productivity?
No, not always. From security point of view, what I'm saying, as you have a proper DTAP environment, so development, testing, acceptance, production, and I know that still a lot of companies don't use or follow that principle. But if you are able to use those approach, and you should be able to do it in acceptance or even a pre-prod before going to production. You should be able to be sure that you are not impacting the production environment. As I mentioned, with some tools you are able to do it directly on production, but even then, my experience is in some situation where I was working in enterprise organizations, if it's a new application you need to launch on production, it's never announced. So before putting them that it's available for outside the world, use it as a pre-prod, do everything what need to be done on the production environment, on the pre-prod, and test it do all kind of tests what is needed, and then promote the pre-prod server to the production server. That make the chances that the impact on the production server when it's already live will be minimized or until nothing. So maybe Mr. Ganesh want to add something on that?
No, I just want to add the kind of importance which I see in very large financial organizations in the last 3 years, which whom I coach or train. We weren't talking about DevSecOps 3 years back, right? Or security 3 years back, but the last 3-4 years has seen tremendous interest from large enterprise organizations into this space. Yeah.
Right. Our next question. Spending too much time on DevSecOps might mean a delay in releasing the product. Can you discuss this a little bit in detail?
I think yes, as I told you, right, everything requires time and money. So that was one of the things which I said, right? You have to invest your time and money on tools, upskilling your developers, but in the larger good, right? In the larger interest for the quality of the code, right? So I was talking to a very, very senior vice president in the SOC team. He told about the importance of secure coding. He told majority of the problems that he sees in the SOC team is because developers have missed very basic things in the secure coding. So it's again goes back to the same thing. You are trying to catch issues very, very early in the cycle. I think it's worth it, if you ask me.
Right. And yes, Mr. Soenil.
Indeed, I can also approve it. Of course, you can do a quick testing and keep a dirty testing and go to production. From my experience, I've mentioned when I was doing pen testing on applications, and we checked the applications with the developers and discussing them. Okay, maybe because after doing your pen test, you will also write your report. In the reports, we will mention the finding, how we are and what steps we have taken to found these vulnerabilities of, and also we need to mention the countermeasures, what and how they should be able to solve it. By discussing that with developers or application managers, system network engineers, I mentioned mostly that they say, I was not aware. Yeah, but you are into this field, so you are knowing all the updates and all the vulnerabilities that's going on. We are not dealing day to day on this, so it's fine that you should be able to mention to us. So now we are able to work on it. So it's a mix of combination that I'm seeing that you should be able to work together. But yeah, by doing that quick and dirty, it could be chances bigger that the process will be slow, but the benefits you will get is more, I guess.
Yes. And coming to our last question, how does DevOps complement Agile?
So Agile is a very broader term, right? I mean, it's been around in the technology space, very popular in the technology teams since 2000, right? So basically, it consists of so many things. Now, the interesting aspect is anything that helps to deliver applications faster, provide incremental value to customers faster is considered Agile. So if you look at from that definition, right, along with the 12 principles of Agile, you will see one is like frameworks like Scrum, which is more team dynamics, process oriented. The second one is technological things, right? So technology excellence. DevOps practices and tools will come under the second part. So just remember, Agile is an umbrella term. You can have many things into Agile practices, and DevOps is one of them.
Right. So we have, I think, one last question. DevSecOps makes developers lazy since they are thinking. Their thinking goes on. Does the DevSecOps tools, will it take care of that? Just like like we missed type or on our cell phones and let the autocorrect fix it.
Yeah, so there are some intelligent tools. For example, I know of one tool called Soteria, which has got an artificial intelligence feature, and it fixes some of the security issues, right? But then quite a lot of scanning tools are there in the DevOps space, which scans your code for security, clean code, design issues. It doesn't make a developer easier. If you say tools makes a developer lazy, I mean, I wouldn't buy that thing, right? The journey is always moving forward, right? We thought when automation was first done in factories, everybody will lose job, but we are actually getting more jobs, isn't it? So journey is always to move forward in any good space, right? So it is always going to help. Yeah.
Yeah, and they are able to work on the other parts where they are maybe good. So I'd also don't totally will say that make developers lazy. I will put it more that they are more security aware or are having more knowledge about the security part. But indeed, they are able to. So by making a typo mismatch or mistyping, if a tool is able to correct it for you, make your life easier, or otherwise other colleagues should be able to check your code again, and then if there are a lot of tools and applications are able to check it for you. There are several tools already available. They are already checking. Check on code if you are typing on Python or Java or those kind of applications. You mistype, they will autocorrect it also. So it make it life easier maybe for them. Maybe more space to work on the security part or the other kind of parts, or improving with the new technologies or the new environment where they are able to work.
Right. So I think we've come to the end of the question session, and thank you, Mr. Ganesh, and thank you, Mr. Soenil, for your collaborative presentation. I'm sure the participants would have found it absolutely interesting and useful, and we hope to see you in the future. So thank you so much once again.
Thank you all.
Everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.